I love your shoes.
Well, thank you.
think
I
the-
got these on StockX. Big surprise. Yeah.
That's amazing. They're fantastic. I did wear my fancy tennis shoes, but
I
everything's
love
black.
those. Well, we just launched women's luxury shoes. So, going
Perfect.
beyond the sneaker. So I'm sure you can find something just like this on StockX, even though it's not a sneaker.
I love it. I love it. Well, for maybe everybody in the room knows who you are, but I think it's really important that for those that don't, maybe introduce yourself, give a
Sure.
little background before StockX,
Okay.
because I think that context is really important.
Yeah.
And then talk about what you're doing now.
Sure. So I'm Deena. Nice to see everyone. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at StockX, and I've been here 3 years. I moved to Detroit in 2019 to join the company. And before that, I have a long career in e-commerce, direct-to-consumer, disruptive startups. So I led marketing for brands like Birchbox, Gilt Group, and started my marketing career before that at Reebok selling sneakers. So in many ways, it's full circle for me to be back at StockX in this industry. StockX, for those who don't know, born and raised in Detroit, just right up the street at OCM, incubated by Dan, backed by leading Silicon Valley venture firms. And we are the leading global platform for consuming and trading current culture products like sneakers, like apparel, like electronics and gaming consoles, and more. And we're global, so we're based here, but we have offices, people, and customers around the world.
I love that. And my name is Cary Tilds. I'm the Chief Strategy and Operations Officer for Frameplay. This is an exceptional treat for me to be here because I've always lived in Michigan, but I've been able to participate at Brand Innovator events at many other locations, but to be home is exceptional. So I just want to thank Casey and Melissa and Mark and everybody else for doing this. I think we should do more of it. So it's incredible. So I love that you said current culture items. I think that's fantastic. Your company has been known since the beginning, being very innovative. And part of that innovation has been your go-to-market strategy, first of all, which is innovative in itself. And then, of course, the marketing on top of that. So can you speak a little bit to some of the more innovative things that you think you did in the beginning but are doing now to propel the brand?
Sure. So I think, of course, marketing needs to reflect the brand, and we had an advantage because the brand itself, like you said, is innovative. The business concept is innovative. And so it was easy for us to layer on top of that programming, campaigns, ideas that broke the mold. In the beginning, it was very much about content and about community building, right? Connecting with this really avid consumer that was obsessed with sneakers and then with apparel and then with the next categories and connecting with them authentically. And so that means aligning with ambassadors that really speak to those consumers' values, that are sort of stimulating great conversation, great momentum in those spaces. It's having partnerships with brands that are more than just slapping our logo on an asset, but really telling stories together in an authentic way. And then, I think it comes back to values as well. This next gen consumer that we serve is so values driven, is so interested in connecting with brands that stand for the same things they stand for, that let them be individuals and express themselves, but also that they can reflect and see themselves in. And so we work really hard to have every campaign, every program, partnership be aligned with the values that we see our next gen consumer.
I love that you said the word authentic because as I transitioned into the gaming world, that was the biggest lesson for me to learn is that if you are not authentic immediately, game over. Literally game over. Any sort of gamer will not, whether you're a casual gamer or hardcore gamer and everything in between. So what is, one of the most innovative marketing examples, that you've done? And of course, it sounds like you had to be authentic when you were approaching, reaching those consumers.
Yeah, well, I'll stick with gaming since you mentioned it and since I know that's your space. So right now, actually this weekend, we're activating with TwitchCon in San Diego. We've aligned with TwitchCon is clearly a leading brand in gaming, but we're again not just doing a big media buy or slapping our logo on some of their assets. We have a year-long partnership. It's everything from content creation to signing streamers to our ambassador roster to activating in Amsterdam and in San Diego. There will be advertising as a component of that, but we're looking to tell a more holistic story. And a lot of that too is connecting with the community of gamers on Twitch, right? So we're doing a bunch of programming, giveaways, social listening to help us understand the audience that we seek to connect with, rather than just pushing our message down their throat. So, that's innovative because it's a platform that is leading, and we're doing it in a way that's authentic and holistic rather than just going big with dollars and hoping everything works out.
I agree with you. From some of the feedback and the conversations that we've heard from other marketers, going into gaming isn't always easy, and it sometimes can be confusing. And even separating the idea of people who watch people play games, which is a streamer, and people who are actually playing games, and you're reaching both in kind of a meaningful, authentic way. Your brand certainly fits. I love that. So tell us about something that maybe is hard. We celebrated something that you did, great, but tell us, some of the challenges you've had. We equally learn from those too.
Absolutely. I love talking about hard things and failures even. One of the things that has been hard for us is we're a quickly growing company that sometimes it's like an adolescent, right? Like you don't know what to do with those long arms and legs. You're sort of trying to catch up with the pace of the business. So as an example, I mentioned we're global. We have operations and customers in 200 regions, operations in 12 regions. And we are struggling with the idea of, okay, global marketing is based here. We're a US born company. Most of the business is in the US. And we want to leverage that to help our new markets grow. But we also don't want to be imperialistic with our marketing, right? We need to let each, whether it's Tokyo or Seoul or Berlin, each market needs to have its own flavor. The local folks on the ground need to help craft the way that we should show up. So over the last year, as we've been increasingly focused on international growth, we've really struggled with that mix between global and local. And it's something we'll continue to refine as we grow.
Yeah, building upon that, I mean, in my earlier WPP days, much of the agency structure always, was challenged by that, whether you're, Unilever or some of the bigger brands, even Ford, et cetera. And you want to protect your brand at the center, but you also want to be locally, culturally authentic. Again, that word authentic is so important. And if you want to be authentic in those markets, how do you do that respecting the culture? So do you have any early?
Yeah, sure. I can share some of our learnings. I think that's, that challenge is especially important when you're a brand that stands up for current culture and for authenticity. And so, we do allow the local teams to guide us on certain parts of the marketing playbook. Things like, content, influencer, community building, the things that were really influential in our early days here. We recognize that those teams need license to do what feels right to them. They know the consumer better, they know the community better, they know the influencers, and so they should lead those decisions. And we're always available in more of a consigliere type of role for those decisions. And then when it comes to media or CRM, data-driven, scaled type of marketing programming, that's where we lean in more from the center because we have the technology, we have the human power, we have the learnings that we can scale across the world.
I love that. So I said I wouldn't give you anything we didn't prep, but now based on what you just said, do you have an agency or are you all internal? How does that work?
Yeah, we are, I would say 95% internal. We have an amazing, mostly Detroit-based creative team. We do leverage agencies for what I would call the keystone high-touch moments. For example, we did a brand refresh, not quite as comprehensive as the one that Casey talked about, but about 18 months ago, we refreshed our visual identity and we brought in an outside partner because it's hard to do a refresh. You're so close to it. You're like, this is my brand. I can't change anything. It's precious. So we brought in an outside partner. We also, this past year in May, late Q2, we launched our first ever brand campaign. And I felt that was the production value and the strategic requirements were a little bit outside of the core skill set of the in-house agency. And so we brought in an outside partner to help us with that. So we're careful about when we bring people in. I believe that great creative is a huge part of our differentiation and our brand. And so I don't want to outsource that more than I need to.
Yeah, I mean, you are culture. Your brand is culture, and not all brands can claim that. So I think that seems really important for you to protect. We just relaunched our brand last week, by the way, but we're
Congrats.
so young that no one will remember the first one. So you're not in that stage, which is good. So let's go back to the topic I love to talk about all the time, which is gaming. I think we chatted a bit about Xbox and Adidas. We also had a big argument at our company about whether it's Adidas or Adidas. So we can debate that
I
later.
can opine on that because
Okay,
when I worked
please.
for Reebok, we were acquired by Adidas, and everyone from the mothership told us, "You say it Adidas." So
I was right. So go on Slack and tell everybody I was right, please, right now.
you
Thank
win.
you. I win. So, I mean, it's
You're
the
welcome.
small things. Xbox and Adidas to support gamers and outreach. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. It's been really exciting to watch what's going on with gaming in the past 2.5 years, maybe somewhat a byproduct of the pandemic, but I think also a byproduct of current culture where convergence is one of the things that's always happening. And in this case, it's gaming converging with, technology, music, sport, all these other influences, giving rise to things like a Gucci Xbox, right? And so it's perfect. It was perfect timing for us to start entering the space by adding gaming and electronics products to our catalog, but also by partnering in that space. So we talked about TwitchCon. We also have two female minority streamers that are on our ambassador roster, and we are very selective about who we bring into our family. We really try to find people that, again, reflect back what matters to the customer. So representation, the female consumer is becoming more and more influential in our space, which is a big shift. So I'm really always delighted when we can bring strong women with, a lot of influence in their space and also a lot to say about other issues onto our platform. So we just announced a partnership with Chica. She's a Puerto Rican streamer. And she has a really active platform outside of gaming and streaming. So we're excited to build with her. We have another woman named Sidian who we have worked with for the last year. And then, we'll see what happens after this weekend. Our summer activation in Amsterdam with TwitchCon was really exciting. The amount of engagement we got really blew our expectations. So I hope that we feel the same after this weekend and it leads to more great things with Twitch.
I love that. And I'm really bummed I'm not going to TwitchCon. And even though they're a competitor, I got this great invite from Galaxy Racer for a party on Saturday night and I can't go. So super bummed. So if anybody's going, I could probably transfer it to you. So let's talk about my favorite topic, data. I love data so much. I could talk about it all the time, which is super geeky and nerdy of me. So what's the most innovative way you found to use data?
I also love data, and data is a big part of the StockX DNA. It's one of the sort of founding pillars, right? Which is that we use data to help our consumers make great decisions about what to buy and sell on the platform. And it's a core part of the product experience, which is one thing that's innovative, right? Really revealing on the product pages and in all of our marketing, how the data behind where a product is priced, when you should make a bid or an ask, or just buy something. So that alone is innovative, I think. But beyond that, we really do leverage data for personalization, which at this point is table stakes. I would say we're sort of in the walk phase as a company with personalization. We have big ambitions, but we have a lot of work to do still to deliver fully on that. But then we actually leverage it in a great way with our PR and content. So we've developed this program called Big Facts. It's a quarterly report that we publish. It's an infographic, so it's fun as well. It's not overwhelming. And it helps people understand, whether it's a consumer or people in the media, in trades, help people understand, key trends, what's happening with brands, which items are great alternative investments, which items have interesting sort of trade journeys from one region to the other. So every quarter we tell a story with data to help illustrate what's going on the platform. And we've had amazing success.
I love that. When is that coming out next?
That's a good question. It will be soon. It's usually at the end. We probably just pushed our Q3 one out a couple weeks ago. So, as we get closer to holiday, we'll probably launch.
I feel like I could use that for my kids' holiday shopping.
Absolutely. I'll send you our last one so you can get inspired.
It's a hot tip. I love that. So in terms of personalization, what I was fascinated about with your business is that you really don't have a business without data at the foundation. I mean, it's literally like the foundational part of how you deliver value and how you have a relationship. And not every company can do that. It's all first party data for you, which, some people are like, talk about all the stuff that's breaking or whatever. But in your case, of course, some things will be challenged, but you have so much first party data that you're dealing with. Do you have a wish list of like something you want to do next with it, or something that you already did that you're so proud of?
Well, we are really looking to build out a broader sort of preference center, if you will. Like, obviously, we have an incredible first party behavioral data, um, but outside of what people tell us with their clicks, we don't capture a much more robust profile. And I think, obviously, the behavioral data tells a big part of the story, but there's also a lot of value in stated preferences, I think, because it's not all there for the clicking, right? So tell us who you're shopping for. Tell us what you wish you could shop for. Tell us, if you like to shop in men's sizes or women's sizes, right? These types of nuances that, again, the click doesn't always tell you, will help us to be able to target in a more relevant and powerful way. So that is on our wish list. It's on our roadmap. And I think it will make us more connected to the customer.
I love that. I started my career in search marketing, and of course, I was like a click person for a long time, and then I realized click is somewhat irrelevant for the most part. So we can talk about that later. I know how storytelling is really important to you and your company, but also in your career, your very valuable career. You have been a storyteller in terms of your marketing. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, and thank you for those kind words. Storytelling, I think, is really essential. Like, if you go back to the earliest days, right? People sitting around a fire, trading wisdom and teaching lessons through spoken word. I think that obviously the mediums have changed, but the power of the word and the narrative remains. And I think with marketing, even as data becomes more powerful and targeting becomes more relevant, people don't just want to be sold, right? I think you need to connect with the consumer's heart and their mind, and that is through storytelling. And so, we believe heavily, and I believe heavily in content. All my teams have always had an internal content generation engine and a community engine where we're not just telling our own stories, but trading stories with the customer through social platforms and other mechanisms. And today we have these amazing social platforms like Discord, where you're in a two-way conversation with the customer all the time. And they're having a conversation about you. You don't even need to be in the room, but you still get to hear it. So, I'm a big believer in fostering that. I also believe that, in the more traditional formats like partnership, you need story to hold it up and to make it legitimate and to make it interesting to the customer. So we're always looking for that. First, what is the story? What is the reason that the customer cares? And then let's amplify it. Let's, drive performance and all the rest.
I also think it ties into your philosophy on authenticity, because how are you going to possibly tell great stories if you don't understand the authenticity of your relationship with the customer? So I feel like those two things go so well together.
And I think this customer, the next gen customer that we talk about a lot and that brands are looking to win, I think they are so savvy and they are so intolerant of bullshit, right? They're not going to be spun. They want that realness and that authenticity that you speak of. And so I think it's extra important to understand. And of course, like you said, that starts with listening. And that's another big part of our practice, is listening through all the formats you can think of, whether it's, the traditional stuff, surveys and user testing and, focus groups, or the more unconventional, like social listening. Again, our Discord server is a huge source of insights for us.
I was just going to talk about Discord, because, man, if you are at all inauthentic on Discord, you will be called out in like 3 seconds.
Absolutely.
Somebody will say, that person's a noob. So if you don't know what a noob is, you can look that up. You will be called out completely. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to marketers that would allow them to be more open-minded to innovation? Because your entire job is innovation, basically, because of your culture-oriented, position.
Yeah, I would say, it comes back to listening, actually. So there's two pieces of advice I would say: listening to the customer, finding ways to hear that signal, that isn't obvious. It may not be the first signal you get. Look for the one beneath that. Again, what are customers saying to each other? What are they saying on Reddit, which for us is another important platform, maybe not for everyone in the room, but find the version of that for you. And listen, and you really have to take your ego out of it, because people don't say a lot of nice things on those platforms. Often they're saying mean things, and you have to put your ego aside and look for the truth within that. I think the other thing when it relates to innovation is looking outside of your space. It's so easy to be blinded by like, oh, here's what my competitors are doing, and here's what like my team has come up with. But what about an adjacent space or a total orthogonal space? Like for us, maybe that insight, someone was asking about auto earlier. Maybe it's in auto, or maybe it's in biotech, or, like looking outside the immediate adjacencies for inspiration is another piece of advice I would share.
I love that. I have to tell you, the first year type of thing, when I went from a auto company to a gaming company, definitely a little different.
Yes.
I love it. Well, I would like to, I think you're an amazing and fascinating person. I would like to open it up. I think that's more important to get, there you go. I think I was feeling the vibe that there were some questions. So I feel like we should get some questions and have other people, and I've run out of them on my cards, by the way.
Who's calling on people? Is it us?
I think
All right,
there's
should we start with the front? Casey.
Casey.
Hi. Sure. Thank you.
Question for you. Let's flip it around to, with your storied career, and you came to Detroit two years ago?
3 years ago, yes.
I'd be curious from your perspective, perception versus reality, right? Long career in marketing, very successful, and doing a great job at StockX. You have a perception by as you move to Detroit, and you're building your in-house capabilities. Give us some perception versus realities of your experience here in Detroit, and future growth for StockX and your in-house team. Right?
Sure. So just for folks to know, I moved here from the Bay Area, and before that, I was in New York for 15 years. So this was a big change for me, and I would say my perception was auto, and sort of maybe time capsule, right? Like the past, like that was my perception as an outsider. So coming here was a great awakening, actually, because there's so much current culture energy here. And also I would say this is a town where I've never met so many people who are open-minded. That was the thing that struck me about, even when I joined StockX, I was the first CMO. I took over a large team. I had co-founders reporting to me, and nobody said, we know what we're doing. Who are you? Everyone was like, great, like let's change things. Let's turn everything on its head. Let's bring new ideas, new energy. And that is something that I've seen sort of everywhere I've been in Detroit, which is just so delightful. It makes me want to kind of be my best self. And then I think, there is something to that, the Midwestern values, that's sort of a great complement to that. I'm really enjoying it. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised. I came in a little bit skeptical, but it's been delightful. We were just talking about, it's such a great place to raise a family. And so I've been really happy here. As we build, we do have a team that's maybe half local and remote in the US. And we are thinking about, now that COVID is coming to an end and people are thinking about coming back to the office, we're thinking about how we create, again, that pulse and that heartbeat here at our headquarters in our hometown. And I think, for the first time, we're going to be posting, in 2 years, we're going to be posting jobs that say location Detroit instead of location anywhere, which is awesome. Yeah. I mentioned biotech. I happen to, my husband works in biotech, so I sort of have this unfair access into that space. And I think there's a lot of really interesting innovation coming out of that space, obviously technology driven. And my last job before I came here was sort of in that space, working in genomics. And so that's a space I'll look to often. And then I think, education, because you're looking at institutions that are creating the next generation of leaders, and what are they doing? What are they writing about in their alumni magazines? What courses are they adding to their curriculum? That's another space I'll look at. But of course, I also look across retail, across e-com, across consumer tech. So I definitely spend, I would say, equal parts looking sort of closer in as farther out. Yeah. And I'd love ideas. If you guys have other spaces that you think have been really influential, I'd love to hear about that. Yeah. So NFTs fits into our vision of being a platform for trading and consuming current culture items. So the idea of these items as being an alternative asset class, I think, is an ageless idea. And NFTs happen to be sort of one of the more current mechanics for that. What we've learned, we launched our NFT program in January. And what we learned, I think, both from watching and from our own experience, is that there has to be inherent value in the item, right? The idea of like a JPEG that trades for this crazy premium, it doesn't seem to have that staying power. I think if it's in our case, a digital token that reflects ownership of a physical product, that makes sense all day long and forever, really. And so that's the way we've been looking at it. So we're not going to, launch infinite NFTs week after week just to have a program, of launches, of drops. Instead, we'll look to continue to find ways to connect it with the core value prop, which is engagement and trading of these alternative assets in current culture.
I'm going to do a commercial. I'm the co-founder of the Web3 Marketing Association, a nonprofit organization that discusses things like ESG, metaverse, NFTs, crypto. So please follow the Web3 Marketing Association as well and participate. Oh, there's one back there.
I really like hearing what you had to say about the customer experience and personalization. Your marketplace is awash with a lot of collaborations right now. Who do you think's doing it the best and why? And then the second part of my question is, how do I get a pair of Tom Sachs GPS shoes from Nike without paying $23,000? Thank you.
Well, just log on to StockX or open your app right now, and you can buy a pair of those Tom Sachs shoes for, close to retail, actually. So that's one of the little known facts about StockX, is that many of our items are not only coveted, but also a great deal and often below retail. So look there. In terms of collaborations, I mean, this is a big theme for us and has been over the last few years. I think for me personally, I've been the most excited about brands that are collaborating in a way that sort of creates an intersection. So again, we were talking about the Gucci Xbox, like so unexpected, really sort of putting in the blender these two different worlds that our consumer cares so much about. And I think what a smart move by Gucci, by all these luxury brands that are doing these collaborations that are outside of luxury and making their brand so much more interesting to the young consumer. So that's the type of collaboration I get the most excited about. Those are also the types of collaborations that trade hotly and often at a premium on our platform, because they're saying something that matters to our customer.
And on top of that, I think that the fashion industry in general has done amazing collaborations on culture and content, especially in the gaming space, but just that culture and content intersection for them, especially in this digital world, is incredible, for sure. Other questions? Another one?
So that was a big question, lots of layers in that. So first, I think you're asking about influencers, like micro influencers, people who have a sphere of influence in their own world, and how do we use that or leverage that? It's something we talk about a lot, actually, in the abstract, the idea of empowering sort of the creator class, the influencer class, and really, again, emphasis on the word micro. We talk about that a lot. One example, right now we're doing a partnership with a show called The Hype, which is an HBO design contest. And it's like kids from cities all over the world. Last season, there was a kid from Detroit, actually a woman from Detroit on the show, and they compete and win. And each week, the winning designer sells their items exclusively on StockX. So that's one example of how someone with, a small sphere of influence, a big platform, and we're just holding them up and amplifying that. We've also talked a lot about things like live stream, just different channels that we could create for, someone who is a leader in their community to tell their story, amplify what do they care about, what are they shopping about on our platform. So it's something we're looking at. And also, while we don't want to monetize our customer data today, we are looking at, how could we get some leverage out of it? We do have a ton of active users and visitors every month. Some people engage, some people use us as almost the Kelly Blue Book. They price check because we are known as like the source. Yeah, but that's our customers are precious and hard won. And so we don't want to sell that data.
I have a question about it feels like your core user started out as not to generalize too much, but kids buying drops, right? That before maybe bots took over and before this collaboration thing exploded. How has that changed who the customer is now, and where do you see that going in the future? Is it more of a partnership with brands to sort of organize this marketplace of resale, or is it still sort of independent of that and dependent upon the demand that consumers have?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly benefit from the brands' drops, their marketing horsepower. We don't collaborate directly with those brands. We would love that, but I think for them, there's some conflict of interest. I think, what's changed in terms of the landscape of consumers, what used to be a niche, right? Like these crazy kids who camp outside of stores has now become the mainstream. You go to any middle school, anywhere in this area, and you'll see every kid is wearing the Court Legacy, a blazer, a dunk, so that represents the mainstreaming of current culture, which is wonderful, but also, we have to work hard to make sure that doesn't dilute it. Our customer base has changed a lot as part of that dynamic. So for example, now a third of our customers are women, which 3 years ago, it was a small sliver. Why is that happening? Because there's more women's product, because more women are interested in adopting this look and feel, because women are buying for their kids. So that's going to continue to change and expand. And that's great. I think that's great. I think, getting more people involved in the consumption of current culture is wonderful. And I also think we have to work hard to make sure there's always that sort of tip of the iceberg directional piece of it that keeps it exciting and doesn't water it down.
Perfect. I think that was our last question, right?
I think that was, but we have a networking break coming up in just a moment. It's going to be a little bit shorter than we had originally planned. So thank you, ladies, so much.